It was supposed to be a calm morning. The sun had just risen, the streets were quiet, and I walked outside with a cup of coffee, ready to start my day. But the moment my eyes fell on my car, my stomach dropped. The side mirror hung loose, deep scratches carved across the doors like claw marks, and the bumper looked as if someone had rammed into it. My hands began to shake. I had parked right beside the HOA's maintenance area the night before, and suddenly all the stories I'd heard from other residents about their careless workers flashed through my mind. I knelt down to inspect the damage. Fresh paint chips, bits of dirt, and even a faint smear that looked like it came from a construction tool. My heart pounded. This wasn't random vandalism. Someone had hit my car and tried to pretend nothing happened. As anger and disbelief took over, I took photos of every dent and scratch. One thought echoed in my head. The HOA will try to deny this. But not this time. That morning, I didn't just lose my peace. I gained a reason to fight back. I stormed into the HOA office, clutching my phone with the photos pulled up. The president, Mrs. Dalton, sat behind her desk, smiling like nothing had happened. "Good morning," she said, her voice dripping with fake politeness. I didn't even bother sitting down. "Someone from your maintenance crew hit my car last night," I said firmly, showing her the pictures. "It was parked right beside your work zone. I want to know who did it." Her smile faded instantly. "We don't touch residents' vehicles," she replied, her tone sharp. "You can't just accuse us without proof." I felt my jaw tighten. "Proof? The damage is fresh, and there were your workers right there yesterday evening. Everyone saw them." She folded her arms and leaned back. "Maybe it was vandals, or maybe you're mistaken." Her dismissive tone made my blood boil. I could almost see the guilt hiding behind her forced calm. Before leaving, I glanced at the corner of the building where a security camera was mounted, pointed directly at where my car had been parked. That's when I realized the truth might already be on tape. I walked out of that office with one thought in mind. If they want to admit it, I'll make them face the evidence. That evening, while I was still fuming over the HOA's denial, my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Evans, quietly knocked on my door. She looked nervous, glancing over her shoulder before whispering, "Can I talk to you about your car?" I invited her in, and she spoke in a low, trembling voice. "I saw it happen," she said. "Yesterday around sunset, the HOA maintenance crew was using that big leaf blower and one of those metal edge cutters near your car. They hit it hard, twice. I heard the sound from my window." My heart started pounding. "Are you sure it was them?" I asked. She nodded. "Yes. I saw the men panic. They looked around, then the supervisor came over and told them to move the cones to block the view. I think they didn't want anyone to notice the damage." Her words confirmed my worst fear. It wasn't an accident they wanted to fix. It was an accident they wanted to hide. I thanked her and promised I wouldn't drag her into trouble. But deep down, I knew this was the proof I needed to push harder. As I stood by the window that night staring at my damaged car, one thought burned in my mind. They thought no one saw, but someone always sees. The next morning, I woke up with one goal: to get undeniable proof. I walked straight to the security office near the HOA building, pretending to be calm even though my heart was racing. The guard on duty looked surprised when I asked about the camera footage from last night. "I just need to review the tape for the parking area," I said firmly. "My car was damaged, and I believe it's recorded." He hesitated at first, but when I mentioned I'd already filed a complaint with the HOA, he sighed and pulled up the footage. And there it was, the moment my suspicions became reality. On the screen, 2 HOA maintenance workers were trimming the bushes near my parking spot. Then, one of them swung a heavy metal tool, hitting the side of my car. The sound made even the guard flinch. They looked around nervously, then moved orange cones to hide the scene from the street. I recorded the footage on my phone before they could think twice about stopping me. My hands trembled, But my mind was laser-focused now. The HOA president could deny words, but she couldn't deny video proof. As I walked away from the office, a strange calm settled over me. They thought they could intimidate me into silence, but now I held the truth in my hands, and soon everyone would see it. By the time I got home, my hands were shaking, not from fear this time, but from determination. I had seen enough. The HOA thought they were untouchable, but the video footage said otherwise. I sat down, took a deep breath, and dialed the police. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher asked calmly. My car was damaged by HOA workers, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. And I have video proof of them trying to cover it up. Within 15 minutes, a patrol car pulled up outside my house, blue and red lights flashing across the street. Neighbors peeked out from their windows, whispering among themselves. 2 officers stepped out, professional, serious, and clearly ready to investigate. I showed them the photos, then played the video I'd recorded from the security feed. One officer raised an eyebrow and said, "That's pretty clear evidence, ma'am. Looks like they knew exactly what they were doing." When I pointed toward the HOA office across the road, the officers nodded and said they'd speak with them immediately. As they walked off, I followed a few steps behind, heart pounding but fueled by a sense of justice. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a spark of hope, because now it wasn't just me against the HOA. The law was on my side. The moment the police officers stepped into the HOA office, the mood shifted completely. The president, Mrs. Dalton, who usually strutted around like she owned the place, suddenly looked pale. Her confident posture melted into nervous fidgeting as the officers introduced themselves and explained why they were there. "I'm sorry, there must be some misunderstanding," she said quickly, forcing a smile. "Our staff would never damage anyone's car." But when the officer pulled out his notepad and asked for the names of everyone who had worked in the parking area that day, her face stiffened. She hesitated. I'd have to check the maintenance logs," she muttered, opening a folder with trembling hands. Papers shuffled, her eyes darting toward the office door, as if hoping one of her board members would walk in and save her. Outside, I stood by the glass window, watching every moment unfold. I could see her lips moving faster, her smile disappearing completely. The officers' expressions grew colder. One of them showed her the still image from my video. Her workers caught red-handed beside my car. That's when she snapped. "Fine. Maybe there was an accident," she said, voice shaking. "But they didn't mean it." The officers exchanged a look, half disbelief, half amusement. The calm mask she always wore was gone. The queen of the HOA was cracking. As they began questioning the workers one by one, I realized the truth was finally catching up to them. Their arrogance had turned into panic, and I wasn't even done yet. The officers gathered the HOA maintenance workers in the parking lot, their clipboards ready. I stood nearby, silent but watching every twitch and glance. The workers shifted uneasily, avoiding my eyes. Finally, one of them, a young man named Eric, spoke up, his voice cracking. "It was an accident," he said softly. "We were trimming the hedges and the metal cutter slipped. It hit the car." The officer nodded calmly. "And why didn't you report it?" Eric looked toward Mrs. Dalton, then back down at the ground. "Because she told us not to," he admitted. "She said if anyone asked, we should say we weren't working near that area." A gasp rippled through the small crowd of neighbors who had gathered nearby. The other worker, older and clearly nervous, quickly added, "She told us she'd handle it privately, said reporting it would make the HOA look bad." Mrs. Dalton's face turned bright red. "That's a lie," she barked. But the officers didn't seem convinced. One of them calmly said, "Ma'am, multiple witnesses are saying the same thing. This is starting to sound like a cover-up." I felt a rush of both anger and relief. For days, I'd been made to feel crazy, like I was imagining everything. But now, in front of the police, the truth had finally surfaced. The HOA's spotless image had cracked wide open, and there was no patching it this time. As the officers finished taking statements, Mrs. Dalton avoided my gaze completely. The woman who once spoke to me with arrogance and control now looked like someone cornered by her own lies. 2 days later, the HOA called for an emergency community meeting. The email invitation tried to sound professional, to clarify recent misunderstandings. But everyone knew what it was really about. Word had spread fast. By the time I arrived, the community hall was packed. Neighbors whispered, cameras ready, eyes locked on Mrs. Dalton sitting stiffly at the front of the room. When she began to speak, her voice was flat but defensive. "There's been a lot of false information going around," she said. "Our staff made a small mistake, and we're resolving it internally. There's no need for drama." That was it. I stood up. My voice trembled at first but grew stronger with every word. "A mistake?" I said loudly. "You told your workers to lie, Mrs. Dalton. You covered it up, and I have the video to prove it." Gasps rippled through the room. I held up my phone and played the clip on the projector screen. The footage didn't lie. The workers hitting my car, the cones being moved, and the look of panic on their faces. The room fell silent except for the faint sound of the video playing. When it ended, neighbors started murmuring, some shouting questions. "Is this true? Why would you hide that? We trusted you." Mrs. Dalton's face turned pale. Her attempt at control slipped away completely. One of the board members tried to speak, but the crowd's frustration drowned him out. For once, the community stood together, not against me, but with me. The HOA had spent years intimidating residents into silence. But that night, I realized something powerful. When you expose the truth, even the loudest bullies fall silent. The morning after the meeting, I got a call from the police department. The officer's tone was calm but firm. "Ma'am," he said, "we've completed our report. The evidence you provided was more than enough." My heart skipped a beat. He explained that the HOA would be facing fines for property damage, obstruction, and falsifying maintenance reports. The workers were cleared of blame. They had just followed orders, but Mrs. Dalton wasn't so lucky. Later that afternoon, 2 police cars pulled up in front of the HOA office. Neighbors gathered quietly as officers entered the building. Within minutes, Mrs. Dalton emerged, flanked by officers, her head low, her expression drained of the arrogance she once wore like armor. Cameras clicked, and whispers filled the air. "She really thought she could get away with it," someone murmured. The board soon announced her resignation, effective immediately. The HOA was ordered to pay for every bit of the car damage, plus additional compensation for emotional distress and property violation. For the first time in a long while, justice didn't feel distant. It was real, and it was standing right in front of me. When I picked up my repaired car a few weeks later, it gleamed like new. But the satisfaction didn't come from the fresh paint. It came from knowing I'd fought back and won. The same neighbors who once stayed silent now smiled at me with quiet respect. The balance of power had shifted, and the HOA finally knew. No one is above accountability. Weeks passed, and the neighborhood slowly returned to its calm routine. But something had changed forever. The once feared HOA office no longer felt untouchable. New leadership took over, meetings became transparent, and for the first time, residents actually had a voice. People started smiling at each other again instead of whispering behind closed doors. As for me, I often walked past the parking lot where everything began. My car, newly fixed and shining, sat in the same spot where I had once stood trembling with anger and disbelief. It wasn't just a car anymore. It was a reminder of the fight I refused to lose. Neighbors who used to stay quiet now came to me for advice whenever the HOA tried to overstep. "You stood up," one of them told me, and that gave the rest of us courage. That meant more to me than any apology or payout ever could. The whole ordeal taught me something powerful. Silence only protects the wrong people. When you speak up, No matter how small your voice feels, you can shake an entire system. That night, as I looked out my window and saw the lights in the HOA office turned off for good, I finally smiled. The fear was gone, replaced with peace and pride. Because I learned that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about never letting anyone think they can break you and walk away.